soon as I finished the first book, I jumped straight into the second book. No pause. I pulled an all-nighter for that, and I'm kind of mad I ruined my sleep over that. Hello, my lovely people. Welcome back. My name is Vidi. For those of you who are new here, this video is a long time coming. We are doing our reading wrap. Rather than talk nonsense at the beginning of this video, we're just gonna go ahead and jump straight into it because I am covering July, August, and September. I'm not going to go over stats. We're just gonna go straight into the book reviews and book ratings, okay? Okay, cool. So we'll talk about how many books I read at the end of this video. But in the meantime, grab a drink, get cozy, and let's get started with this video. Here's my drink. This is going to be kind of like my pre-workout drink. We're gonna try the Solani. I wanted to try the Witch's Brew one, but they're out of stock right now, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to try it. We got this one, okay? Okay, this is the cotton candy flavor. I'm hoping it's okay. Getting better at opening cans. Ooh, wait a minute. This one tastes good. This is an energy drink. I can't be drinking it like juice. Let's go ahead and jump into our first book, which is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This is a classic literature. This is a reread. I've read it before. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into the synopsis. Essentially, Jane Eyre is an orphan taken in by her aunt and uncle after her parents passed away. Sadly, she grows up feeling unwanted and neglected. Eventually is sent to a boarding school where she grows up and learns to become a lady. Once she's an adult, she decides she's going to be a governess at Thornfield, where she meets Mr. Rochester and falls in love. That's kind of like the gist of the story if you haven't read Jane Eyre. This is the perfect season to read Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is like a classic gothic. This is atmospheric. You have your mansion, you have your spooky things that happen now and then without it being a paranormal, supernatural kind of book, because that's not what this book is. It's more about like the feeling of it, right? Of course, the synopsis was quick and short. There's so much more that happens. There's so much more character development that happens. It's not just a love story, in my opinion. The love story is not the main point in this book. It's more about Jane Eyre and who she becomes. So like I said, very vivid scenes. Love the writing. Now I think one of my favorite things about Jane Eyre and why it holds such a dear place in my heart is Jane Eyre herself, the character, the main character. She has so much growth from being this child that feels very unwanted and goes through all this adversity to be where she's at the end of the book. That's my favorite part about her, is that she might be this soft person, but she's this strong person. She is very strong with her values, and I appreciate that. I feel like when you analyze it with the romance itself, like I said, it doesn't necessarily feel like the focus of the book. It's not just a love story. I feel like the romance is there to give more character growth for her and Mr. Rochester, if I'm being honest. Not my favorite character, but I do appreciate how Jane Eyre grew from that relationship. I had told myself I was going to give the ratings at the beginning of the book. This is a 5-star for me. This is one of my favorite classics to read. Oof. I thought this would be aesthetically cute. That is really good. Okay, the next book that I read is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This is a young adult fantasy. Young adult, right? Yeah, this is a young adult fantasy book. This is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. A quick synopsis about this book. This story follows Ivy Bennett, who is debuting in high society in London after the failure of her sister's debut. Ivy is now expected to make an advantageous match, right? Okay, cool. Now, here's where the twist comes in if you haven't heard about the story. During her debut, the queen tells everyone that her son, the prince, is going to take a wife. If they want to participate in this contest to win the hand of the prince, they could sign up. However, the reason why this is a twist is because the queen is fae and so is the prince. This story essentially is Bridgerton meets the Cruel Prince. I love the approach to this book for the fae because you have a lot of whimsy, you have the fae being malicious and tricksters. That was one of my favorite things about this book, is just the approach. I love when fairies are evil, because growing up I always believed fairies were evil, and I really did enjoy the story. I enjoyed all the characters. I really want to know what happens in the second book. So yes, I really did enjoy this, and I did mention that there was a little bit of spice in this book, but it is age appropriate. A fade to black kind of metaphor situation. It's approached in the way teenagers normally approach things. It makes sense for like the age group this is. So I did put a 1.5, but love this book. Would definitely recommend reading this whenever, but spring feels appropriate for this. Next book, I do not have a physical copy because I read that on my Kindle. I borrowed it from Libby. This book was my book club book, and that is Pretty Guilty Women by Gina Lamana. This was a 4 stars for me, right? I enjoyed myself. This is a murder mystery kind of thriller, not like a scary thriller, more like mystery side. So I'm not going to give too much of a synopsis. Just know there are 4 women that confess to the same murder, but only one of them is actually the murderer. I will say there is some triggering content. It's not a dark book, but there is triggering content. So I would look into those triggers. But personally for me, the reason why I don't believe this is a thriller book is because it feels more like a coming of age book, since you get to know each character and their lives and what they're going through and all of that stuff, which is so much fun. I loved this book. It was predictable, yes. As soon as one of the characters was introduced, I knew where we were going at that point. It's really easy for me to see patterns, so I'm not gonna fault the book because I was still very entertained. I was still turning the page digitally, still just wanted to continue reading, and I had a really good discussion with our book club about it as well. I think the only negative feedback I had was just the epilogue. For me, the epilogue just didn't vibe. It was like a bit of a disconnect with the rest of the book. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to spoil anything about this book, but I really did like it, and that is why it is a 4 stars. Solid 4. Enjoyed myself. Next book is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is another reread for me. This is another young adult fantasy. So a quick synopsis about One Dark Window. This story follows our main character, Elspeth, has a secret monster in her head in a world where if she shows one sign of magic, she could get killed for it. Her goal is to cure that little monster in her head and the sickness that's going through this world before the monster fully takes over. Boy, oh boy, this book. The first time I read it, I guess I kept it the same. I gave it a 3.5. I don't think I changed it unless I messed up. So yeah, I gave this book this second time around a 3.5. I think what makes this book special and what makes this book stand out a little bit more for me is the magic. I didn't go too much into detail about the magic system. Just know that the magic, you have the people who have this sickness where they have magic and it's degenerative, and then there's people who don't have any magic at all but use magic through these providence cards. There's just, again, a price for the magic that you're using. I hope that makes sense. It makes a lot more sense if you read the book. But the magic system is what sold me. To make it even better, this is another kind of gothic fantasy. It's gloomy, like literally their world is encapsulated by fog, right? It's fog, yeah, clouds, it's gloomy. They talk about having a gray morning, a gray sky every day. There's no blue. What I really liked about this book, the second time around reading it, is the details. There's so many little details that really make this book a lot better than what it actually is. It's very atmospheric for sure, so if that's not your thing, then you might get a little bit bored because it is a much slower pace than a usual fantasy. It is thankfully just a duology. This is the first book in the Shepherd King duology. Even though the pacing is slow, it fits for the type of book it is. I like the characters. I like Elspeth. The monster was probably one of my favorite characters. And I'm not going to talk more about it because I did read the second book. I should have just... If I read series together, okay, we're gonna talk about the second book later on in the clip, okay? Okay, cool. I really did like this book. I gave this, like I said, a 3.5 out of 5. And there was, again, some spice in this book, but once again, it is age appropriate for a young adult fantasy. I gave it a 1. It was very much a Fade to Black kind of metaphorical situation. The next book I read in July was another Kindle book, hence why I don't have the physical copy. And that is Kiss of the Basilisk by Lindsay Straub. And boy, oh boy. I gave this a 2.5. Okay, hear me out. So The Kiss of the Basilisk is a spicy fantasy. That's what we're gonna call it, a spicy fantasy. So just a quick synopsis. This story follows Temperance, our main character, who was born on the same year or around the same year as the prince of her kingdom. And now she is supposed to participate in a contest to win the hand of the king. And in order to win this contest to marry the prince, they have to train with the basilisk to learn how to please the prince. So hands down, even just the plot itself, smut. And you know what? That's okay if you like that. I like that. I just did not know that going in. That was the problem here. I went in blind, so I had no idea that this was all smut, no plot. Well, it had a little bit of plot. Very little, very tiny, teeny bit, right? But it was definitely dialogue, spice. Dialogue, spice, which makes sense because the whole point is this virgin, I think she was a virgin, is supposed to learn how to please how to be a sexual deviant. I don't like that term. A sexual goddess? I don't know. She's supposed to learn how to do anything and everything with the prince by practicing with the basilisk. By the way, I keep saying basilisk, so yes, they are snakes essentially, but they have human form. I don't think I've read a book like this before where it's like spice every other page. I enjoyed parts of it, but I was not convinced, right? That's why it's a 2.5 and not a 3. But one of the reasons why I was not convinced was the love triangle. I could not decide. I just wanted both at the end of the day.
I'm like, can this be a why choose?
I don't know what happens in the next book. I know there's a second book. I don't know if it's come out yet or if it just came out. However, if you're looking for a smutty book, this book. So yeah, 2.5 out of 5 for stars, a 5 out of 5 for spice. Woohoo! Spicy book. Moving on to our next book. So after that, I needed a regular book. Next book I read was The Wedding People by Alison Espak. This was another book club book. This is more leaning towards literary fiction. This was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. I like this book. I really enjoyed this book. The Wedding People follows two main characters. Phoebe shows up to this one hotel all glammed up, no luggage, and gets confused as a wedding guest for a wedding that's happening in this hotel for our second female main character, which is Lila. However, Phoebe's not there for the wedding. She has hit rock bottom. Lila over here is a perfectionist to heart. She is trying to please everyone until Phoebe comes along and kind of ruins her plans. I loved it. I really liked it. This does have some triggering topics right off the bat, literally from the first page. So I will definitely look into that for sure. It's not a dark book. It just has some heavy topics. I loved this book mostly because you have Phoebe, who is a middle-aged woman, has so much wisdom, but she's still so completely lost in her life. And that makes me feel so good about myself. So good, because it just kind of like shows me that it doesn't matter what age you are. You're going to have moments when you're not okay, and that is okay. You don't have to have life figured out. And then you have Lila, who's probably like me, probably why I found her annoying, because I'm just like,
ooh, projecting there.
yes, very much a coming of age book. Loved every second of it. It was another one of those books that I enjoyed discussing. There was a lot of things you could discuss about, so a good book club book. It made me so mad at times. I was so angry at times, which I love when books make me mad like that, but in a good way, right? I did say there was a little bit of spice on here. It was 0.5 for spice because there was mentions, and I think we did get some explicit words, but it was a fade to black moment. Very, very fade to black moment. Did not even last like a paragraph, I think. I don't want people to get surprised if it's not a fully clean book. And as you can see, I have no other stack here, but I did read 2 more books, and I'm going to talk about those together because it is a duet and it'll just be easier to go over it. I don't have the physical copies because I read them on my Kindle, and that is The Court of Ravens duet. So I got this. Feathers So Vicious and Shadows So Cruel. Yeah, I got it. Okay. By Liv Sander. The Court of Ravens is a dark emphasis on dark romance fantasy. Fantasy romance? Romantasy. Dark. So definitely look up a trigger list. I feel like a lot of the stuff that happens is for shock value, but there is a lot of triggering stuff that does happen. Now, overall, this series and each book, 3 stars. It was a 3-star series. There wasn't anything too memorable. I would not recommend this to someone who is a beginner into dark romance because it's not. But if you like dark romances, here's one. It's just, again, very dark. Let's talk about the synopsis really quick. Our main story follows Galanthea, who is the daughter of a lord that has murdered so many of the ravens. As revenge, while Galanthea is traveling to meet her betrothed, her caravan gets assaulted and she gets kidnapped. She ends up getting taken to Raven territory where she meets Malir, who has a bone to pick with her father, and Sebian, who has this urge to protect her. So she kind of just gets thrown into the middle of this kind of war situation. I will admit, the reason why I read this duet so fast is because as soon as I finished the first book, I jumped straight into the second book. No pause. I pulled an all-nighter for that, and I'm kind of mad I ruined my sleep over that, but I still enjoyed the story enough. I also do feel like the magic system in this world is a little bit confusing to follow sometimes. It did take me a little bit to get used to, but I also thought it was unique for that reason. I think it just needed to be a little bit more fleshed out just so you could follow it a little bit better. I did not really care too much for Malir. I loved Sebian. The second book, however, we reached the first part of it. Interesting. Middle kind of lost me. End broke me. Second book I have mixed feelings about. I don't know what else to say about this. I remember having just very mixed feelings about the series in general because I don't know if I liked it or not enough. Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like it should be a 2. The tension, the steaminess, yes. So anyway, like I mentioned, this is a dark romance, so there is spice. For spice, 4. It was spicy, but there was plot. Oh, I remember. Wait a minute. One thing that really did annoy me about this book that I could talk about is how Galanthea handled not her own PTSD, but others, and kind of was just like,
Hey, look at me, I'm strong, I can get over it, so you get over it as well.
rather than being like, everyone has their own healing process, right? It felt a little bit insensitive. But anyway, that's it. That's it for July. Okay, October. No, we're not in. Okay. I am in October. It's the 1st of October. Okay, August. Let's do this. It is cozy, so cozy in here. We have pumpkins and decorations everywhere. So we're going to pretend like there is not a lack of continuity in this video. We have our we have our August reading wrap right here. First book that I picked up in August is An Abundance of Katherines by John Green. This is a young adult book. I did give this a 2.5 out of 5. So long story short, the story follows our main character, Colin, who has only ever dated Katherines, which means he has always been dumped by Katherines. So this is a coming of age book where Colin is trying to find an equation to basically prevent heartbreak. So I think overall, I felt like this was a good concept, but personally, I am not the targeted audience at all, like at all. I got bored reading this book. And the only reason I was able to finish it was because of the audiobook. I do feel like if you like coming of age books, if you like reading young adult books, if you like the idea of a teen boy prodigy trying to understand love, this might be something you might be interested in. Like I said, 2.5 out of 5, and I did put a spice rating, and this is a 0.5 spice, which is appropriate for a young adult book. You know what? We're taking off the bow. You guys don't care. You can't even see the back of my head. The next book I picked up right after that, I needed something digestible. So I picked up King of Pride by Anna Huang. This is the second book in the King of Sin series. This is a spicy adult romance. I put emphasis on spicy because Anna Huang is known to write spicier, smuttier books. It's also a billionaire romance. I did give this a 3 out of 5. This story follows Kai and Isabella, who are complete polar opposites of each other, but can't seem to stay away from each other. It just goes back and forth between them, right? I enjoyed it. It was good, digestible, spicy. I know what I'm getting myself into. I think the reason why it's just a solid 3 is because there wasn't too many memorable parts now that I'm trying to think about them. I love Kai, but I feel like he would not prioritize Isabella a lot of the times. And the way things kind of worked out at the end, it was almost just conveniently working out. Because of the type of book that you're reading, you know you're going to get this like possessive, I will do anything for you kind of romance. Kai was just lacking that little bit. That's not a bad thing. But in the book where I'm expecting it, I did wish that he worshipped her a little bit more. I don't know how else to say it. I've been reading too many dark romances. I still enjoyed myself. So overall, like I mentioned, a 3, and as for spice, I did give it a 3. And I decided to pick Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is, like I said, the second and final book to the Shepherd King series. This is a duology. We finally read the final book, and I'm so happy I did because I loved this book. I loved it so much more than the first book. I really enjoyed my experience reading this. It was a very close 5, but I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5. So I don't want to give a synopsis about this book because it is the second book, and we also already talked about the Shepherd King series a few moments back. As I was saying, loved this. The reason why it was not a 5 was because I'm not going to lie, at the beginning I did get a little bit bored, not because the story was boring, but because I just wanted the adventure to begin, because I could tell that this book was going to be all about a journey, and I was ready for the journey, I was ready for the adventure, I was ready for the world building, and I got every single thing I asked for. We had world building, we had a complex magical system, we had new characters, well not new, but we had different main characters now, because believe it or not, Elspeth took a back seat for the main character. We did not really follow her as much, which I don't mind. Normally I'm not a fan when that happens, but I actually really feel like it worked for this book specifically. I loved Elspeth's relationship with the monster. I loved seeing more of Raven and like him being an independent character and not just a character for Elspeth. I loved our side characters. It was a refreshing story. It felt like a new story. We were following new characters, a lot of character development, a lot of world building, and it still tied up so nicely. I think it was just a really good fantasy fantasy book if you are trying to step into fantasy without trying to commit to like a 8+ long series. So like I mentioned, this was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. And as for spice, I did give it a 0.5. Again, age appropriate, more metaphorical, more fade to black kind of moments. Love this book. Moving on. So the next book I picked up, I did pick it up on my Kindle, so I do not have the physical copy, and that's The End of Summer by KJ Mishike. And now for this book. Before I get into anything else, I'm just going to straight up say I DNF'd it. I did not rate it. I did not give it a spice rating at all. So I will tell you all the synopsis and why I didn't finish it. I also did talk about it a little bit more in detail in this one other reading blog if y'all want to kind of see that. Long story short, End of Summer follows our main character Gretchen, who falls, trips, and creates a mess in front of a very important client in her waitressing job and ends up losing her job. No one is willing to give her a job. She ends up getting referred to a kind of shifty pole studio that does parties and teaches pole. And yeah, it kind of just follows her, and it's a romance story. The reason why I DNF'd this book, I just did not like the approach that it had to this type of industry, this kind of work, and I feel like it already has a very negative connotation and stuff like that, and I just did not like how judgmental it felt. I was not okay with it, and personally for me it was also the writing style. I could not follow the writing style. It was a telling rather than showing kind of writing style. So I did get up to like maybe 70% through the book, and I was just not enjoying. I moved on. And that's okay. So moving on to our next book, which I also do not have my physical copy because I let my friend borrow it. And that is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. 5 star. 5 star. Do I have to say more? Yes, I probably do. 5-star book. Oh my god, you can also see my whole reactions in that reading blog that I just talked about, because oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Oh, I love that book so much. I'm not going to go into a full detail of what it's about because you need to read it. This story does follow our main character, Joan, who applies to be an astronaut in the 1800s. What? No. In the 1980s. And it just follows her story. That's all you need to know. No more context, just go and read that book, right? This book broke me and put me together, and this was an emotional roller coaster, and I loved it, this book. This is a past and present kind of book. It goes back and forth in the timeline. I just really did like overall everything about the story, and I feel like I can't tell you why without spoiling the story itself. All I can say is it was a good book. I love the characters. I connected so much with the characters. It made me feel so many different things. It made me so interested from the very beginning because it is about astronauts in space. I had an existential crisis. If a book gives me an existential crisis, it's going to be a good book, I think, for the most part. That's all I'm going to say about this book. Just know that it was my favorite of the month, one of my top books of the year. 5 stars, and as for spice, I did give it a 0.5. Again, fade to black, metaphor kind of moment, not really the emphasis of the story. Okay, the next book I picked up, once again, do not have the physical copy because I did read this on my Kindle, and this was one of the Kindle picks. This is Made It to the Monster by Sarah Spade. This book I gave a 3 out of 5. Right off the bat, I was kind of surprised with this book. It was a pleasant surprise, but it was definitely not what I was expecting. So this story follows Shannon, who summons a shadow demon and is trying to kind of send it back. So this is a fantasy romance. It is a mated romance. I thought it was going to be a dark romance because of the shadow demon, but the shadow demon was such a golden retriever. Like I said, nice surprise. I enjoyed it. The only thing about the story why I wasn't obsessed or loved it or anything like that was because it felt incomplete. The other reason why I don't feel like I would continue the series is because it once again did the telling rather than showing on the second half of the book. But I did enjoy myself. Cute palette cleanser, I guess. And then of course it is insta-lovey, insta-lusty because it is a mated romance. That is Made It to the Monster. Like I said, 3 stars, and as for spice, a 2.5 out of 5. The next book that I picked up is The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. This is a young adult summer romance book, so definitely recommend reading this more in the summertime, of course. But you know what? If it's dead middle in the winter and you want to imagine it's summer, why not? this gives summer vibes. I did rate this a 4 out of 5. The story follows our main character, Meredith, who's attending a wedding in Martha's Vineyard with her family. Meredith, because of the death of her sister, closed herself up, so she's just trying to get back into life and learn to handle her grief and stuff like that. This story does have very heavy notes on grief, so this is a summer romance as well. We do have our male main character, Whit. Overall, I feel like this book was a coming of age book, touched on topics of how to handle grief, all wrapped into a cute young adult romance book. Whit was one of my favorite male main characters. I feel like he was very understanding without pressuring or taking advantage of Meredith's emotional state. Really good book. Really enjoyed myself. Very strong summer vibes. This was a 4 out of 5 for me, and I did put a spice rating of a 0.5. Again, young adult book with age appropriate spice, metaphors, fade to black kind of moment. The next book that I picked up was a book that I was very excited for, and this was another book club book, and that is Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. This is the first book in a series. I don't know what the series is called. I'm assuming it's Blood of Lilith. And when I picked this up, aside from it being a signed copy, I was very excited because the book cover screamed 80s slasher film for me. I don't know why. It was not at all, but I knew that wasn't going to be the case. I did give this book a 3.5 out of 5, so I did enjoy myself. It follows our main character, Lilith, who has run away from like her estranged family and is living under the protection or the territory of, oh my god, please, 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 please. I don't know how you pronounce this name, even though there is a pronunciation guide at the beginning. Sahariv, who is in the territory of Sahariv, kind of like under his protection, right? She and her roommate live in this kind of like dingy apartment, so in order to stay alive and well, she steals. And one day she steals a blade. That blade just happens to kill everyone that touches it except for her. There is a bit of a side plot romance going on. This was a pretty solid book. It had all of the elements to make me like it. This felt like a mafia meets urban fantasy kind of story, and I think it's described like that too, but it very much had that mafia elements of like territories and leaders and families, but we had the fantasy part of it. It is an urban fantasy. Usually it takes me a while to get into urban fantasies, so this had all the elements for me to love. The world building, the characters, the complexity of the magic system, but I just had a hard time following everything. I don't know if it was the name pronunciation. I don't know what it was. I just had such a hard time following. And you know what? I'm going to blame it on my reading slump, because I feel like I would have really enjoyed this book if I was not in a reading slump. I also had guests over during the time that I was reading this, so it was just kind of hard to dive into the story. I did really like Sahariv, the dude. I really liked him, and I liked the small glimpses that we got into his mind, because we got little tiny teeny chapters, sometimes some longer than the others, but I like that. And the ending was so interesting. I am not sure if I saw it coming or not, because I was very confused throughout the whole book. Anyway, long story short, I feel like this deserves a reread. This was a 3.5 out of 5. Like I said, I really do feel like I would enjoy this a lot more. Moving on to my next book, which was another Kindle pick, and that is Revival by Debbie Lynn. I will say right off the bat, I DNF'd this book. So Revival does follow our main character, Tori, who wakes up from a 4-year coma only to find out that a veil between her world and another world has fallen, and now magic exists in their world, and her sister is engaged to her fiance. I could not get into it. I'm so sorry. I just could not. I feel like, once again, it was the reading slump. It was just not something I was really looking forward to reading. I did not want to read any fantasy at the moment. I had to put it down. I feel like a big part of it was probably the pacing. I think it's a good concept. I just could not read it at the moment. Last and final book of August is another Kindle book. This was not part of my TBR jar pick. This was just a random Kindle book that I wanted to read because I had nothing else to read, and I needed something fluffy. I needed something that I knew would get me in a good mood and would not allow me to fall into a reading slump. I picked up Wrangled by the Alien Rancher by Ursa Dax, and this was a 4 out of 5 for me. This was a cutesy book. This was book number 2 in that series, just to kind of give an overall arching overarching plot of the series, and then we'll talk about the actual book itself. This series is about a bride program where human women sign up to this bride program to go to a different planet and marry one of the aliens that are there. What these first three brides don't know is that they're going to a convict's world. The aliens that are in this planet were convicted when they were kids who were too young to fulfill a sentence from their own home planet. They decided we're going to go throw them on this planet and hope they survive, all kind of taken care of by this one warden. Each book follows a different alien with a different human, and this is book 2. This follows Fallon, who we met in book 1, our resident golden retriever, and Darcy, the pink-haired bride that could be a little bit cold and has a very, very hard time trusting people. This is kind of like a golden retriever black cat kind of relationship. Darcy kind of grew up with this mentality of what being a wife and what a marriage looked like because she was raised to be the perfect wife, and Fallon has done everything possible to study about humans to be able to bond with his bride. That's kind of like the gist. It follows Fallon and Darcy, and they're so cute. I love them. Fallon is one of my favorite aliens. It was just cute. They made sense. I loved Darcy's character development and how she learned what a marriage could be. They make sense. I do really like these stories. They're cute, fluffy palate cleansers. They are not as spicy as the Ice Planet Barbarians. I feel like I always compare it to those books because when it comes to alien romances, I feel like those are the most popular ones to compare to right now. So like I said, this is a 4 out of 5, and as for spice, 2 out of 5. Like a typical adult romance book. That was August. Go on over to October. September! I keep saying October. It's October today, that's fine. Final month segment. We're going to be reviewing our September books that I have right here. The first book that I read for September was We Are All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter. This is a thriller slash mystery. I feel like a lot of Karen Slaughter books have very much like Criminal Minds feel, which is probably why I enjoy her writing style so much. Like usual for all Karen Slaughter books, please check content warning. This one really got me and it made me feel really uncomfortable and gross. I had to take moments from the book because it was just... But also, as contradictory as it sounds, I could not put it down because I needed to know what happened next. Again, her writing, it just sucks me in. This story is about 2 teen girls that go missing, and Emmy, our main character, is the detective that is assigned to that case. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. This was a 4-star for me. Even though there were moments when I just really felt very icky and uncomfortable, I still enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the writing style overall. It was a very fast-paced book while focusing on the characters and still focusing on the overall mystery. And I think that's what makes her writing so interesting for me, is that there's that little extra that either distracts from the overall plot so you don't see a plot twist coming, or provides to the overall plot so then it's not just a stagnant book with mystery, whodunit, solved. And per usual, I feel like they have very satisfying endings. So I did enjoy this. This was a 4-star for me. And moving along to the next book. Hold on, I grabbed the wrong book. That was another vampire book. Okay, anyway, next book I picked up was Vampire Academy by Rachel Mead. This is a young adult fantasy romance kind of situation. And this is, of course, a reread. This was one of my favorite series when I was a teenager, and I lived for this book. As a reread, a whole different experience, of course. Just a quick synopsis. This story follows our main character Rose, who ran away with her best friend Lisa, and so our story starts off where they are found and taken back to the academy, and now Rose is still trying to protect Lisa not only from the dangers of high school drama, but also she still feels like there's a threat to Lisa's life, an actual threat. That's kind of the gist of it. Of course, this is a vampire book, so Lisa herself is a vampire, or what they call in this book a Mori. Rose is what they call a Dhampir, who is a half vampire, half human. Dhampirs in this story are what they call guardians, who protect the Mori, protect them from the evil vampires, which are Strigoi. I wanted to be Rose so bad because she was training to be a Dhampir, right? She was this badass character. I wanted to be her so bad. Now as an adult, of course, I have my opinions about this book. I feel like for the book that it is targeted to a younger audience. It makes sense. A lot of the problems in the book is more high school drama, just a high school romance, but make it vampires, while there's still being a little bit of a threat because of course this is a series, there is an overarching plot, and that's I think what I really liked about the story, which is the overall series while still being set in high school. As an adult, that's just something that does not entertain me as much. I did find it very nostalgic for that it's still always going to have a sweet spot, a little soft spot in my heart. It kind of just like influenced a lot of my personality when I was younger. Whether that was good or bad, that is up for debate. With that being said, something I did of course find problematic and uncomfortable was the romance, unfortunately, because while there wasn't a huge age gap, which someone pointed out in a previous vlog, there wasn't a ridiculous age gap where the vampire was like 300 years old and then we have a 17-year-old. No, the age gap was just between a 17-year-old and a 24-year-old. It was a 7-year age gap. What made it a little bit uncomfortable was the circumstances surrounding it, because the love interest, Dimitri, was a teacher of sorts. He wasn't a professor, he was a mentor. So there was an imbalance of power. And of course, we have a young, impressionable teenager who also has kind of like mommy daddy issues. I already talked about how this book was like a core book for me. This book is obviously very targeted to a younger audience, and I think that's what makes this a little bit problematic. It's because of who the audience is, how you can't really see right or wrong between that kind of relationship. Because ask me when I was 15, I did not think this was a problem. Ask me now, I'm just kind of like, how did you see a 17-year-old girl as a potential person to date? That is just the only thing that did make me uncomfortable, and I go a little bit more in detail as to why in this other reading vlog if y'all want to watch that. I feel like I talked about this book way too much to spend too much time in this book review over this book. That aside, it did just feel nostalgic to me and I enjoyed the memories I had with it. Did I love this book like I did when I was younger? No, it felt very surface level. We didn't go too much into detail. I feel like if I continued reading the series, that would be a whole different story and I might be a lot more entertained. I rated this book a 3.5 out of 5, mostly out of nostalgia and the giddiness I had while reading these very memorable scenes in my head. So yeah, that's Vampire Academy. Now the book I picked up after that was Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. I was in a young adult mood. I felt giddy after reading the Vampire Academy. Funny enough, I had mentioned how Vampire Academy did not interest me as much because it revolved all around just high school. Well, this is literally a high school romance and I loved this book. Essentially, this is, like I said, a young adult romance. This takes place in high school. However, we do cover some very heavy topics here. There is a content warning page at the beginning that I recommend looking at. So a quick synopsis. The story follows our main character Shannon, who has gone through a lot of hardship in her life, has been bullied since she was like born basically, and she has a very terrible home life. And by bullying, I don't mean just words. I mean like physical at that point. So we get to a point where Shannon is bullied so severely, she gets pulled from her school and put into a private school. There, on her first day, she accidentally gets hit in the head with a rugby ball by our main male character, Johnny. And of course, he feels very apologetic and he just feels protective over her because this girl's tiny. They tell you every other page she's super tiny. It sounds so simple when I say it like that, but this book had my heart in a grip. This was such a close buy for me. This was a 4.75. I've never given a quarter rating before, but this one, it wasn't exactly a 5, but it was a very close 5, so it had to be a 4.75. I love this book so much. I was reading this on my Kindle. It was one of my Kindle picks that I decided to go to Barnes & Noble to get the book and finish reading it in the physical format because I just loved it that much. Like I mentioned, we are reminded she's super tiny. There's a lot of cringy dialogue, but I feel like it works for the type of book it is because high school love can be so awkward and that's okay. You're just kind of trying to get the hang of it. I did get a little bit annoyed at how repetitive we were getting on how tiny she was, but I think the only thing that stopped it from being a 5 was that there were points where we would read the scene twice because we were seeing it from Shannon's perspective and then Johnny's perspective, and I felt that got a little bit repetitive at times. But other than that, this was almost a perfect book for me. I loved it. It made me giddy. It made me like There was so much character depth, which I feel like is why this book is so loved, because you just get these very complex characters who are kids but have gone through so much in their life that they do have so much depth to them, and I feel like they're just very well written because of that. Y'all know I love a good character arc, and I feel like this has that, and I'm very excited to read the second book. This is a 4.75. We do have crude language, no explicit spice or anything like that. So the next book I picked up was The Spellshop by Sarah Beth Durst. 5 star. That's all we're gonna say. 5 star. Okay, no. I'm kidding. But yeah, 5 star. This is a cozy fantasy. There is a romance plot. Grab some cinnamon buns or grab some bread and jam. Just grab a cozy snack because you're going to want one, and curl yourself up with your pet, with your stuffed animal, with a blanket when you read this book, because oh my god, I love this book so much. This story follows our main character, Keela, who is running away from the city that she lives in because there is a rebellion happening, and the library that she lives in, because she's a librarian, is on fire. She ends up running away with boxes of books that she's trying to save, and her assistant, who is a spider plant. They end up sailing to a really remote island where she grew up in and is trying to start her life all over. That's kind of the gist of the story. It sounds dramatic, and the beginning kind of is because she is running away, but it is such a cozy story. I think my favorite thing about this fantasy was just the imagination of the author. The characters sound so whimsical. It was a very whimsical book. I loved every second of it. As I mentioned, I'm a sucker for a character arc. I'm a sucker for just very well-fleshed characters because they make you care for them, and I cared so much for Keela because she was socially awkward. She had gone through some traumatic experiences before even running away from the library, is slowly trying to learn how to trust people and ask for their help, and seeing that development was beautiful. The magic was lyrical. Did I say magic? The writing was lyrical. I read one scene and I can feel the magic around me, and I loved this story so much. It was a clean romance. That was also a nice plus. 10 out of 10 I would recommend for a nice cozy fall read. I love this book. And I forgot to mention, but The Spellshop was an online book club book. Now for our next book, I did read a Kindle book. This was not a Kindle pick, this was just a random book that I wanted to read, and we already talked about the series earlier, so we're not going to explain it all over again. This is the 3rd book in the Cowboy Colony series, and the book is Resisting the Alien Rider by Ursa Dax. This was cute, this was fluffy, this was a 4.5 star book with a 2 chili pepper spice. Like I mentioned earlier, I already talked about the series, but I will give a little bit of a synopsis and why I like this book a lot more. This story does follow Magnolia and Garrick. Garrick is charged to take Magnolia to her groom, Oaken. He was not able to come and get her, basically, right? Because he broke his ankle. Garrick was charged to take Magnolia to Oaken because he was already traveling towards that direction. They were like, take Magnolia. This story follows, obviously, Garrick and Magnolia and a 3rd person, Killian, who is Garrick's ward. He is another child who was convicted for murder. Even though the story follows Garrick and Magnolia, the main issue is that she is not intended for Garrick because Garrick declined having a human bride. They're starting to develop feelings, but they both know that they're not supposed to be together. I think that's what makes the story a little bit more interesting. It feels like there is a bigger issue than the other 2 books had, which makes the feelings a lot more conflicting between the 2. And then of course we have the kid, Killian, who brings out a soft spot in Garrick and just makes the dynamic between the 3 of them a lot more complex, and it's just super cute. It's so fluffy. This has been my favorite of the series so far. I've mentioned this before. I love a single parent / guardian trope. This is a Grumpy Sunshine kind of trope as well. I just really enjoyed myself. The book I read after that is King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. This is the 3rd book in the Red Queen series, and for that reason we are not going to talk at all about what this book is about because there's no way I can tell you anything without spoiling the first 2 books. This is a young adult fantasy kind of dystopian novel. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. When I finished this book, I was so conflicted. Well, I don't want to talk too much about the book without spoiling it, I will say one of the male main characters, Cal, he's supposed to be a love interest, and I never really liked him, and I definitely did not have a better impression of him after this book. Just the way it ended, I'm just like,
I really don't like you.
I love Maven. I still do. I know I'm not supposed to, but I do. I feel like Maven makes the story a lot more interesting because he is so complex. I really did like the time the book spent between Mare and Maven because I just felt like it was a lot more interesting than between Cal and Mare. Do you think we'll be able to get through this before my camera shuts off again? Okay, we were talking about King's Cage. Mare's character development. I feel like the second book, I really did not enjoy her as much, but I knew it was coming, and the third book gave that. I really loved seeing her grow. I appreciated that we took moments for her traumas that she has gone through because it's a lot of them, and she's trying to heal but trying to move on and trying to trust. Like, her reactions make so much sense, and I do really appreciate the continuity of her character. I feel like the reason why this was not a 4 for me is because once we got to like maybe this part of the book, I think it was, and we didn't see too much of Maven anymore, it kind of slowed down and it lost my interest a little bit, if I'm being honest. And then it picked up again at the end. We got to see a lot of other characters as well, and I enjoyed those point of views, but I'm excited to finish the series. I also did write down a spice rating. I did give it a 0.5. We do have very age appropriate spice. We do have a scene, but it's a metaphor, fade to black kind of moment. 3.5 out of 5 with a 0.5 spice rating. Okay, the next book I listened to for the most part was The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. I am not going to give a rating for this book because I feel uncomfortable rating them. I did rate I'm Glad My Mother Died by Jeanette McCurdy, but I didn't feel comfortable rating it. I'm gonna leave it up because that was just like my original feelings about it. But for the sure, this one, I'm just not going to rate. This story does follow Sherry Frankie, who is the daughter of this YouTuber. I forget her name. This YouTuber was a mommy kind of family vlogger YouTuber who was pretty popular. They were part of the 8 Passengers channel. It basically kind of just talks about her story of being this kind of like YouTube celebrity and how it felt growing up. It takes a darker turn by Sherry describing her family's time in essentially what was a cult. That's kind of like the gist of it. Overall, it was definitely something that needs to get talked about a lot more. We don't really think about the consequences of sharing so much of our lives on the internet, me being included, and how that might affect the people around us, and to what point is it exploitive of others' privacy when you are vlogging others. And that's just like the vlogging part of it. That's not even touching about the cult. Yeah, it was definitely very heavy content warning for sure. The book I read after that was Death by Laura Thalassa. Hold on, I'm a little thirsty. This is the final book in the 4 Horsemen series. I gave this a 4-star rating without kind of giving too much away with the rest of the books, which doesn't really give away. Most of them feel like standalones anyway. We're following our final horseman, Death. It's up to him to bring the end of the world, and it's up to our main character, Lazarus, to stop him. It's a dark romance story, a dark fantasy romance story. It's post-apocalypse, pre-apocalyptical, post-apocalypse because things happen, but pre-apocalyptical because the apocalypse hasn't happened yet. But it's definitely on the darker side. It's not super dark. I feel like if you are trying to get into dark romance, this one has heavier topics than any usual book because it's still like a dark book, but it's not terrible. It's still manageable. I would still suggest looking at trigger warnings. I feel like this book follows Laura Thalassa's usual format. In the 4 Horsemen series, we have a horseman, we have women trying to stop the horseman, and we have a relationship forming between the two. We go back and forth between love and hate, love and hate, love and hate. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was a bit of a palate cleanser. It was easy to consume. There wasn't too much to like analyze or anything like that. It was a good closure to the overall series. We got to see the previous characters as well. It was interesting. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time. There's not really much else to say. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't want to give it a 4 stars. I think I'm gonna give it a 3.5. It was good and it was entertaining. That's just it. That's about it. It didn't really stick out too much to me. I think overall, rating the 4 Horsemen series as a whole, I think it's a good series if you take your time with it, because if not, it's just repetitive. Every book is the same. It's just different characters with maybe different personalities. So I would definitely definitely pace yourself. Read a book now and then, because I feel like that's how I enjoyed this a lot better. I feel like if I had read them all together, I would have gotten bored at some point. I think overall rating, I would give this like a 3.5 series as well. So yeah, I changed my mind. This is a 3.5 book. As for spice, this is a little bit spicier than a usual romance book. So this is a, what did I give it? This is a 3 for spice. The final book that I read for September was not a Kindle pick or anything like that. I just picked it up because I saw someone else reading it and it seemed interesting. And that is Desperate Run by C.J. Riggs and M.L. Burns. So I did read this on my Kindle. This is a dark romance, dark and gory romance. So definitely keep that in mind. I do not recommend this at all for any beginners into dark romance. It's gruesome. Look at the trigger warnings because it is very gross, very gory, and definitely dark and triggering topics. That aside, I gave this a 4-star rating. This was a good book in my opinion. I really liked it. This story follows our main character Max, who signs up with her friends to go to this kind of carnival slash haunted maze, like a scare fest kind of place where anything goes. You have to sign all these waivers. There's a lot of stuff that can happen. It follows our main character Max, like I said, who catches the eye of one of the scare people, one of the people that works there, whose name is Draven. Just kind of follows the relationship between them two. That's kind of the gist of the story. It takes a span of 2 days. It is during Halloween weekend, which feels like a perfect read for this time of year. It made me laugh so much because Max, our main character, is so funny. She has this very dark sense of humor, and her attitude, which could be very comical, she doesn't take herself that seriously, is so refreshing for these kind of books. Not because it's a dark rom-com, but it's just the way she approaches her own trauma. This is how she wants to deal with it, and for what it is, it makes sense. What she's going through, it makes sense. I really did enjoy the approach of her character, and I feel like Draven's character, we always want like a morally gray or like a black full-on like dark void character for these dark romances, and this dude is that. Draven is brutal from beginning to end. His attitude doesn't change. It's just his obsession with this girl that like is added to this. Again, this is a dark romance. This is toxic. This is unbelievably not okay for any kind of relationship. If you don't like dark romances, definitely this is not going to be your cup of tea. But I really did enjoy it. Even though it takes a span of 2 days, I feel like the pacing was fun. I feel like the story was interesting. It was spicy, very, very spicy. I did give the spice a 4.5. I am still unsure. It's between a 4 and a 4.5 because there's still a lot of plot, but there's so much smut as well. Like, this is a spicy book, and when it's not spicy, it's like gory. I don't know how else to describe it. There's a lot of scenes that we get that were just like, ugh, gross. The faces that I made while reading this, I had to not read this while eating because I was going to throw up. I'm not good with gore. So yeah, but I really did like the book. It had the like running through the forest kind of vibes and actual touch her and you die. Like if you touched her, you were dead. I like this. This was a good dark romance. Very interesting book if you like dark romance. Like I said, 4 stars, 4.5 for spice, smutty book. And yeah, I have 2 last books I want to talk about. Both of these were somewhat of DNFs. The first one was Heir of Stardust and Secrets by C.C. Hartley. This was my Kindle pick, and I did read it for like 3 chapters until I realized this is not what I want to read right now. We were getting into October. I wanted something spooky, something gloomy, something, you know, October. And this was more of a fantasy. And I feel like I might like this book, but I've had it in my TBR for so long that I just don't have the need to read it anymore. So this is a soft DNF. Maybe I'll go back to it, but it's not my priority. I can't honestly tell you too much about it because I got to like up to chapter 4. All I know is that our main character, Nyleria, I think is her name, she's just not wanted by her family. Her family does not like her, especially when she was born, and then her twin sister was a stillborn, and then her grandparent said that she has evil inside of her. Her family was just kind of like, we don't want you, right? You are the reason for all of our misfortune. That's kind of like the gist that I got. I don't know exactly where the story was going after that. Personally, for me, like I said, I DNF'd it because I was just not in the mood for that kind of book right now. DNF for now. Now, the other Kindle pick that I did for my TBR jar last time was A Veil of Truth and Trickery by Annalie Ford. record. So it turns out I actually read this book back in 2022, and I think I've mentioned this before already. And because of that, I just didn't prioritize it, and I just took it off my TBR list because I've already read it. Personally, cannot tell you what it's about. I don't remember, and from what I saw, it looks like it's the series, but I never got to the second book. All of this to say, I did not pick it up. It's not technically a DNF because I already read it. It's just I did not want to reread it, and I wanted to let y'all know for full transparency as to why I did not do a review for that book specifically. But yeah, that's kind of like it actually. Oh my god, wait, we're done with this video. We're done reviewing our books. Oh my god. Whew, that was hard. So I did count how many books I read in total the past 3 months, and that was 24 books. So we reviewed 24 books together. I think I might want to do this again. I don't know. I really don't know. Let me know down in the comments below if you prefer a monthly reading wrap like I used to, or a quarterly reading wrap like we did. I know quarterly reading wraps, I don't know how long this is going to be, but I know they're going to be really long because I'm going through so many books. We reviewed 24 books in this video alone, while a monthly reading wrap will review anywhere between 5 to 10 books. So it might be a lot shorter. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below what you prefer. That's about it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you stayed till the end of the video, also comment down this emoji because y'all are real ones for sticking with me till the end. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already and you would like to, please subscribe. I usually make book content, and now and then I'll do some lifestyle vlogs. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble for I don't know how many minutes. Have a beautiful day and happy reading. Bye.